The morning sun filtered through the lace curtains of Evelyn Moore's kitchen, painting golden threads across the dark mahogany table. The air smelled faintly of cinnamon and lemon polish, two things that had comforted her since her husband James passed away 10 years ago. It was a quiet and slow Sunday morning when the world seemed to breathe in peace. Evelyn moved carefully, her knees aching from endless courtroom stares and restless nights. At 62, she had retired from the district attorney's office in New Orleans, where she had spent 3 decades locking away men who thought they could outsmart the law. But she was no longer the prosecutor in her home, this little brick house on Britannia Street. She was just mom. The doorbell rang, slicing through the calm like a gavel strike. Evelyn smiled faintly. Only one person rang that early without calling first. Her son Marcus and his wife of 3 months, Patricia. When she opened the door, Patricia was the first to enter. She was radiant as always, tall, poised, wearing a yellow sundress that looked like it belonged on a magazine cover. Her skin glowed like warm caramel, her curls tied in a silk scarf. Patricia carried 2 steaming cups of coffee, balanced carefully on a wooden tray. "Good morning, Mama Moore," Patricia chirped, her smile wide and sugar-sweet. "I made you something special today." Evelyn arched an eyebrow. "Special, huh? I hope you didn't try to bake again. That last pie nearly killed me." Patricia laughed, a melodic sound rehearsed to perfection. "No baking this time, just coffee, my own blend." Evelyn took the cup but paused. Something about the smell hit her wrong. It wasn't the bitterness of dark roast or the sharpness of chicory. It was something chemical, a metallic undercurrent like antiseptic. She smiled politely, but her mind sharpened. Years of prosecution had honed her instincts sharper than a scalpel. She'd seen murderers who smiled sweeter than angels before. Patricia turned to the fridge, humming lightly as she reached for the cream. Evelyn's heart thudded once, heavy and deliberate. The mugs were identical plain white porcelain, the kind she bought in bulk. Her hand moved almost without thought, sliding the cups just a few inches across the counter, switching their positions. When Patricia turned back, Evelyn sat calmly, pretending to stir her coffee. "Here you go," Patricia said, pouring cream into her cup that had originally been Evelyn's. "Drink up while it's hot." Evelyn nodded, watching her over the rim of the mug. Marcus's voice floated in from the living room, lazy and distracted. "Patty, honey, don't spoil Mom with too much caffeine." He was sitting on the couch, reading the Times-Picayune, oblivious to the small storm about to break in his kitchen. Patricia chuckled, took her first sip, then paused. Her expression flickered. Tastes a little off," she murmured. Evelyn tilted her head. "Does it?" Patricia smiled tightly, setting the cup down. "I used too much cinnamon." Minutes passed. The silence between them thickened. Patricia began coughing softly, then harder until the sound turned violent. "Are you all right?" Evelyn asked, feigning concern as the younger woman clutched the table's edge. Patricia gasped. "Something's wrong, my throat." Marcus dropped his newspaper and rushed in. "What happened?" "She just started coughing," Evelyn said evenly. "Maybe the coffee." "Call an ambulance," Marcus shouted, kneeling beside Patricia. She was trembling, face flushed red, gasping for air. As the paramedics wheeled her out 20 minutes later, Evelyn followed quietly, her thoughts burning like coals. That coffee had been meant for her. Chaos blurred into motion at the hospital, nurses shouting, machines beeping. Patricia writhed on the gurney, her skin mottled with red rash, eyes wide with panic. Evelyn stood beside Marcus in the waiting room, silent as the white walls. "Mom, what the hell happened?" Marcus whispered. "She said she made coffee. I drank mine. She drank hers." Evelyn replied, her voice calm, almost detached. Then she started choking. Marcus rubbed his forehead, pacing. "She wouldn't, she couldn't, she could," Evelyn said softly. But she didn't say why she would. Not yet. 2 hours later, a doctor emerged, grim-faced. "We found traces of a toxic compound in her system," he said. "This appears to be deliberate poisoning." Marcus's mouth fell open. Evelyn felt her stomach twist, not in guilt but in shock at how real the accusation suddenly sounded. Before she could respond, a weak, trembling voice called out from behind the curtain, "She poisoned me." Everyone turned. Patricia was pointing straight at Evelyn, tears streaking her cheeks. "She tried to kill me. She made me drink it." Evelyn stared at her, speechless. Her own cup, untouched, still sat in her car. She could have proven the truth, but no one asked. 2 police officers entered minutes later. Mrs. Moore said Detective Harris, a man in his 40s with a steady tone. We need to ask you a few questions. The air seemed to leave the room. Back at home that night, the silence pressed heavily around her. A police car idled outside its headlights, washing over her porch. The officers called it protection, but Evelyn knew better. She was no longer a victim, she was a suspect. When she went to her bathroom, she froze. Behind her bottle of aspirin sat a small vial of clear liquid and a handwritten list with Patricia's name circled. Her breath hitched. Someone had been here. The list looked like her handwriting down to the loops and flourishes she'd used for years, but Evelyn knew she hadn't written it. The doorbell rang again. Detective Harris stood there with another officer. He said, "Mrs. Moore will return with a warrant in the morning. Please don't leave town." Evelyn smiled faintly. "Oh, detective, I'm an old lady with arthritis. Where would I even go?" But when the door shut, she whispered into the stillness, "Anywhere but here." She stared at the flashing patrol lights, feeling something she hadn't felt since her days in court, the creeping certainty that she was being outplayed. Someone wanted her destroyed. Someone had planned this down to the smallest detail. She thought of Patricia's bright smile, Marcus's nervous glances, and the bitter smell rising from the cup. The taste of betrayal was stronger than coffee. Sometimes the people we love most are the ones holding the poison. Would you recognize it before it's too late? If this story touched you, share your thoughts below. What would you do if your own family turned against you? The morning after the hospital felt like a hangover of fear. Evelyn sat at her kitchen table, still in her nightgown, staring at the untouched cup of coffee she had made for herself. The steam had long since died, but the smell the scent still clung to her nostrils. She couldn't tell if it was her imagination or if the faint trace of chemicals still lingered in the air, mocking her. Outside, a police car was parked across the street. Its engine idled quietly, the same dull hum that had followed her all night. They said it was for her safety, but Evelyn knew the truth. They were watching her and waiting for her to make one wrong move. The phone rang sharp and cold in the silence. She flinched before picking it up. "Mrs. Moore, it was Detective Harris. We'll be arriving with the warrant at 10 a.m. Please make sure you're home." "As if I have anywhere else to go," she muttered, but he'd already hung up. Evelyn placed the receiver down and pressed her trembling hands to her face. Her body ached not just from age, but from exhaustion, disbelief, and the creeping sense that her life was beginning to crumble faster than she could gather the pieces. When she looked up, her eyes landed on the photograph on her kitchen shelf her and Marcus taken 10 years ago on his law school graduation day. He'd been so proud, so bright, her only child, the one she had raised alone after James died. She had given him everything, every ounce of energy, every dollar she could spare. And now that son couldn't even look her in the eye. The memory of last night replayed in her mind. Patricia's trembling hand was pointing straight at her. Marcus stood between them, torn but silent. The disbelief in his eyes hurt more than the accusation itself. Her son didn't defend her. He hesitated. At precisely 10, a loud knock echoed through the house. "Mrs. Moore, New Orleans PD." Evelyn opened the door, face calm but pale. Two uniformed officers entered, followed by Detective Harris and a forensic team. They moved through her home with silent efficiency, opening drawers, scanning shelves, and bagging items. It was clinical detached, like watching strangers dissect the remains of her dignity. "Please cooperate," Harris said gently, though there was no warmth in his tone. "We need to verify some things." Evelyn crossed her arms. "Verify that I didn't try to kill my daughter-in-law, you mean?" The detective's expression didn't change. "We're just doing our jobs, ma'am." "Of course," she replied dryly. "And I did mine for 30 years, detective. I know what it looks like when someone's already been tried and convicted before the evidence even comes in." Harris didn't respond. His eyes flicked toward the bathroom where they'd found the vial. Minutes stretched into hours. They took her computer notebooks and even the receipt folder she kept by the phone. One of the younger officers whispered something to another, glancing at her with pity or suspicion. Evelyn couldn't tell anymore. When they finally left her house, looked like a crime scene stripped bare. Dust motes danced in the air where her peace used to live. She sat in her armchair, staring at the spot on the counter where the coffee mugs had been. Her mind wandered to Patricia. That perfect smile, the soft-spoken voice, the way she'd blended into their family, like honey into tea. She'd fooled them all. But why now? Why her? Was it money envy? Or something colder, darker, like revenge? That evening, Marcus came. Evelyn heard his car before she saw him, the low rumble of the engine she'd helped him buy years ago. He walked in without knocking, looking older than his 34 years. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes shadowed. "Mom," he said, voice tight. Evelyn didn't rise. "You should have called first. I might have been busy being interrogated." He sighed. "Please don't start. I came to check on you." "Oh, how thoughtful," she said, bitterness slipping through her calm tone. "Between your wife's accusations and the police raid, I feel positively cared for." Marcus looked down. "Patricia's stable now. The doctors say she's lucky." Lucky. Evelyn's laugh was sharp. "She's lucky I drank my coffee first." He flinched. "Mom, please no, Marcus," she interrupted, her voice trembling now. "You've been quiet this whole time. You let her point her finger at me. You let them take my house apart. Do you know what that feels like?" He rubbed his forehead. I don't know what to believe. Everything happened so fast. The police They found what someone planted," she snapped. "You think I'd be stupid enough to keep poison in my own bathroom?" He hesitated again. That single heartbeat of silence between them said everything. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears, but her voice steadied into something cold. "I see. You really don't believe me." Marcus's lips parted, but no words came out. She turned away, gripping the edge of the counter for balance. "Get out, Marcus. Go home to your wife." "Mom, go." Her shout echoed through the house, bouncing off the empty walls until it sounded like someone else's pain. The silence returned when the door closed behind him, thick and suffocating. Evelyn stood alone in her kitchen, staring at the faint stains left by the coffee cups. It wasn't just poison in that drink, it was betrayal. It had been brewing for months, maybe years, hidden under all their polite Sunday mornings. That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. The police car still sat outside, headlights glowing faintly like unblinking eyes. Every creak of the house made her heart race. At one point, she went to her window and saw a figure across the street, a man in a hat pretending to read a newspaper in the dark. Surveillance, she thought grimly. She shut the curtains and sat on the edge of her bed. Her mind wouldn't stop replaying Marcus's face, the doubt, the hesitation, the fear. When James was alive, they had dreamed of building a legacy. He had been a history teacher. She had fought for justice in court. They believed they were teaching Marcus to be honorable. But somewhere along the way, something broke. Maybe it was her fault. Perhaps she had raised him to chase power instead of principle. Her chest tightened as she whispered into the dark, "What did I do wrong?" The clock ticked on. Midnight came and went. The only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant whir of tires outside. When the phone finally rang at 2 a.m., it nearly stopped her heart. She picked up slowly. "Hello, Evelyn," said a voice she hadn't heard in years, deep, calm, familiar. "It's Franklin Hayes, her old partner, her friend." She swallowed the lump in her throat. "Franklin, I didn't know who else to call." "I heard," he said quietly. "About Patricia, about the warrant." "They think I tried to kill her," she said, her voice breaking. "They think I lost my mind." Franklin exhaled. "You didn't. I know you didn't. Tell me everything." And she did, from the coffee, to the hospital, to the vial in her bathroom. She told him about Marcus, about how his silence hurt more than the accusation itself. When she finished, there was a pause on the line. "Evelyn," he said finally, "listen to me carefully. They're going to arrest you tomorrow morning. I have contacts, still good ones. They confirmed it." Her heart lurched. "Arrest me on what, attempted murder? Patricia's blood work came back and they're building the case. You can't stay there." Evelyn pressed the phone tighter to her ear. "I'm being watched. Then go out the back. Tonight. Don't pack too much. Take cash documents and your car keys. Come to me. You'll be safe here." "Franklin," "Please," he said firmly. "Good people go to prison because they have trusted the system for too long. Don't let them take you without a fight." For a long moment, Evelyn said nothing. Then she nodded, even though he couldn't see her. When the call ended, she sat there for another full minute, listening to the silence of her house. The law had been her life. Now it was her enemy. She crept, gathering her purse, passport, and the small photo of Marcus as a boy. Her hands shook as she tucked it inside. Then she opened the back door. The cool night air hit her face, carrying the scent of magnolia and rain. Somewhere, a police radio crackled faintly. Evelyn stepped into the darkness, an older woman barefoot in her backyard, hunted by the world she once believed in. The night swallowed Evelyn whole. Her old sedan crept along the narrow streets of New Orleans, headlights, low engine humming like a guilty secret. Every shadow looked like a policeman. Every turn felt like it could be the last she'd take as a free woman. Rain had started to fall, thin, hesitant drops that tapped on her windshield like impatient fingers. The wipers moved rhythmically, slicing the water into fleeting streaks of clarity. She kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting flashing red and blue lights to appear at any moment. But the road stayed empty. When she reached the highway leading to Baton Rouge, Evelyn finally exhaled. The city lights faded behind her, replaced by the deep, swallowing dark of the Louisiana countryside. The rain thickened, a silver curtain blurring the world. She drove past endless cypress trees, their gnarled limbs reaching over the road like ghosts of old memories. Her hands gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles whitened. Her pulse beat hard in her throat. She had prosecuted killers, liars, thieves, but nothing compared to the terror of being the hunted one. At a gas station miles from the city, she pulled over. The place was deserted except for a flickering neon sign and a vending machine that hummed like it had seen too much. Evelyn bought a cup of bad coffee to warm her hands. The bitter taste burned her tongue, but she welcomed it. It was real, not poisoned. She sat in her car for a while, the rain drumming above, trying to quiet her thoughts. How had it come to this? Her mind replayed Marcus's voice, low and uncertain. I don't know what to believe. He didn't believe her. Her own son. For the first time in decades, Evelyn cried. Silent tears ran down her cheeks, hot and helpless. She didn't cry for fear of prison or Patricia's betrayal. She cried for the loss of something much deeper, the shattering of a bond she had thought unbreakable. Her vision was blurred when she finally started the car again, but her resolve hardened. She would prove her innocence even if it meant facing the darkest corners of her own family. By the time she reached Baton Rouge, dawn stretched across the horizon. The rain had stopped, leaving the air heavy with the smell of wet asphalt and magnolia. Franklin's house sat at the edge of town, a modest two-story place shaded by oak trees and wrapped in quiet. The porch light was still on when Evelyn pulled up. Franklin opened the door before she could knock. He looked older than she remembered, his beard grayer, his eyes more tired, but something softened in his face when he saw her. You made it, he said. Evelyn nodded, stepping inside. The warmth of the house hit her like an embrace. The air smelled of coffee and old paper, the same comforting mix she remembered from their days at the DA's office. Does anyone follow you? He asked, his tone all business now. No, I was careful. Good, sit down. Evelyn sank into the couch, exhaustion finally catching up. Her hands trembled as she reached for the mug he offered. I haven't slept since yesterday, she said. I can tell, Franklin replied, sitting across from her. I've already made some calls. Patricia isn't who she says she is. Evelyn looked up sharply. You found something? He said, I found enough to be worried, sliding a folder across the table. Inside were printed photos, records, and a few old newspaper clippings. Your daughter-in-law's identity checks out on paper, but barely. There are inconsistencies. Multiple social security numbers are linked to similar names, addresses that don't exist. Evelyn frowned, flipping through the pages. One photo showed Patricia know a woman who looked like her standing beside an older man in a wheelchair. The caption read, Harold Blackwood, local businessman, dies suddenly after brief illness. Evelyn felt the air leave her lungs. When was this? 2 years ago. Arizona. He handed her another clipping. Different name, same face. Robert Mills, a Denver investor, dies 4 months after marriage. She's done this before, Evelyn whispered. She marries them, kills them, and takes the money. Franklin nodded grimly, a black widow with a law degree and a gift for performance. Evelyn closed her eyes, my God. And Marcus, he brought her into my house. Franklin leaned forward. Evelyn, listen. If she's who I think she is, she's done this for years. And she's good. She picks her targets carefully, older men, widowers, and anyone with assets who has no one to protect them. You are supposed to be her next victim. Evelyn opened her eyes, anger beginning to burn through the exhaustion. Then why frame me? Why not just finish the job? Because killing you outright would make Marcus suspicious. But if she can turn him against you and make him think you're unstable, she inherits everything cleanly. Marcus gets the estate. She gets him. It's elegant in a sick way. Evelyn's jaw tightened. She's not getting away with it. Later that morning, Franklin set up his laptop on the dining table, its screen glowing blue in the soft light. Evelyn sat beside him, watching as he typed quickly, logging into old databases and calling in favors from friends still inside the system. She's used at least 3 aliases, he said. Patricia Peterson is in Louisiana. Victoria Blackwood is in Arizona, and Sarah Mills is in Colorado. Same woman, different lives. She's erased herself every few years and started over. Evelyn leaned back, rubbing her temples. She's brilliant, she murmured. Brilliant and heartless. Franklin gave a dry smile. Reminds me of someone I used to work with. Evelyn shot him a look. I never killed anyone. Not yet, he said lightly, though the moment between them was heavy. They fell silent again, the only sound the tapping of keys and the occasional rustle of paper. Evelyn studied the files spread before her, the photos of the victims, the smiling face of Patricia, in everyone unchanged by time. Each man had died within a year of marrying her. Each had left a sizable inheritance. And now she had moved on to Evelyn's son. The thought made her stomach twist. She's not just dangerous, Evelyn said quietly. She's patient. She plays the long game. Franklin nodded. That's what makes her so deadly. For a long time, neither spoke. The sunlight shifted through the window blinds, cutting lines across the table. Evelyn's reflection on the laptop screen looked older and more complex, like someone she barely recognized. Finally, she broke the silence. Franklin, I need to go back to my house. He looked up sharply. Are you insane? They'll arrest you on sight. I left something there. My security camera. It might have footage of Marcus that day. Franklin hesitated. If you're right, if he went there after you left, then we'll have proof he helped her. Evelyn met his gaze. Then that's what I need to find. That night when the town was quiet, Franklin drove her back toward New Orleans. They took back roads through swamp country, the sky wide and low, the air thick with the scent of mud and cypress. Evelyn stared out the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. The passing truck lights painted her face in quick flashes blue gold and gone. I used to think justice was clean, she said suddenly. You find the truth present it and people see what's right. Franklin glanced at her. And now I see it's just people. Scared, angry, selfish people, each protecting what's theirs. He didn't argue. When they reached the outskirts of New Orleans, Evelyn's pulse quickened. The sight of her neighborhood, a row of tidy houses and trimmed lawns, felt foreign now, like a set she no longer belonged to. They parked 2 streets away. The police car that had been stationed outside her home was gone. They think you ran, Franklin murmured, or they're setting a trap. Evelyn opened the door anyway. I don't care. The night smelled of rain and memory. She crept through her backyard, the grass damp beneath her shoes, until she reached the small camera hidden above the porch light. Her fingers shook as she unscrewed it and slipped the SD card into her pocket. When she turned back, she caught her reflection in the dark window. Tired eyes, streaks of gray hair, but something fierce underneath. For the first time since this nightmare began, she didn't see a victim. She saw a fighter. The following morning began with the low hum of tension. Evelyn sat at Franklin's dining table, staring at the small SD card lying between them like a live grenade. Neither of them spoke for several seconds. The air in the room felt thick, heavy with fear and hope. Franklin connected the camera's card to his laptop. The familiar blue light blinked, and a small folder appeared on the screen. Evelyn's pulse quickened. Play the footage, she whispered. Franklin clicked open the file. The video showed the front porch of her house still quiet. Nothing unusual at first. The timestamp matched the afternoon when Patricia had been in the hospital. For a minute, there was nothing. Then headlights cut across the driveway. Evelyn leaned forward. It was Marcus's car. She watched her son step out wearing the same gray shirt she had seen that morning. He glanced around nervously, looking over his shoulder twice before unlocking her front door with his own set of keys. Franklin froze the frame. That's clear enough, he said. He went in. Keep watching. Evelyn murmured, her throat tightening. The video continued. Marcus disappeared inside. Time moved 10 minutes, 20:40. Then he reappeared, holding something small in his hands, a plastic bag half hidden under his coat. He paused, looked directly toward the street, then slipped out the back gate. Evelyn covered her mouth with both hands. Oh God, she breathed. Franklin sat back, his jaw tight. He planted the evidence, your own son. The room fell silent except for the faint hum of the laptop fan. Evelyn's heart pounded painfully, each beat echoing in her ears. For years, she had imagined the worst criminals, men who killed for greed, women who poisoned for revenge. But nothing prepared her for the image of her own child slipping through her door like a thief. I need to understand why, she said at last, her voice almost breaking. Why would he do this to me? Franklin hesitated. Sometimes people don't need a reason that makes sense. Sometimes it's love twisted into loyalty for the wrong person. Or maybe I failed him, Evelyn whispered. Maybe I made him believe money could fix everything. Franklin looked at her carefully. Evelyn, don't do that. This isn't your fault. She didn't answer. Her eyes stayed on the paused image of Marcus, his face caught mid-motion, blurred but unmistakable. They spent the rest of the day digging deeper into Patricia's history. Franklin's old contacts in law enforcement still owed him favors. Through them, he managed to pull sealed case files from Arizona and Colorado. By evening, a clearer picture had formed, cold, methodical, terrifying. Patricia, or Victoria Blackwood, as one of her old IDs read, had been investigated twice for suspicious deaths. Both cases were dropped due to a lack of evidence. Each victim was wealthy. Each had changed his will shortly before dying. She's been doing this for over a decade, Franklin said, scrolling through the reports. Different names, same pattern. She kills, she vanishes, she reappears somewhere new. Evelyn shook her head slowly. And she married my son. She looked me in the eye, called me Mom, and served me poisoned coffee. Her voice cracked on the last word. Franklin's expression softened. We'll bring her down, Evelyn. Both of them if we have to. She looked up sharply. Marcus doesn't belong in the same sentence as her. Doesn't he? Franklin asked quietly. He made a choice. He had a chance to tell you the truth. The words cut deep, but Evelyn didn't argue. She couldn't. The truth was already unbearable enough. That night the rain returned. Baton Rouge was cloaked in mist, the streets slick with reflection. Evelyn couldn't sleep. She sat by the window watching droplets chase each other down the glass. Her mind wouldn't rest. Every memory of Marcus played like a cruel slideshow, the way he used to bring her flowers after school, the way he'd cried when he lost his father, the way he hugged her after passing the bar exam. When had that boy turned into a stranger capable of betrayal? She thought of Patricia's smile, that perfect curve of deceit. Evelyn wondered if Marcus even knew who his wife really was, or if love had blinded him completely. Maybe Patricia had found the cracks in his heart, the insecurities Evelyn had ignored. Marcus had always wanted to prove himself, to step out from his mother's shadow. Patricia must have seen that, used it, fed it. Evelyn pressed her forehead against the cool glass. You poor fool, she whispered into the night, unsure if she meant her son or herself. By morning, Franklin had already printed copies of every document they'd found. The table was a battlefield of evidence, photographs, marriage certificates, death reports, forged IDs. We need to take this to the state police, he said. Evelyn hesitated. If I walk in there, they'll arrest me. Not if we show them this first. Her fingers hovered above the security footage. It's not enough. She's still alive, still free. We need to find her before she disappears again. Franklin frowned. How? We don't even know where she is. Evelyn thought for a long moment. Then she said quietly, Patricia never does anything without control. She'll go somewhere she can watch Marcus make sure he doesn't talk. Somewhere close. Franklin nodded slowly. Then we start with his house. They drove back toward New Orleans that afternoon. The sky was bruised purple, heavy with approaching rain. Franklin kept his eyes on the road while Evelyn sat rigid beside him, hands clenched tightly in her lap. She instantly recognized the white colonial house when they reached Marcus's neighborhood. Lights were on inside, faint silhouettes moving behind the curtains. Evelyn's stomach twisted. Franklin parked a block away. We go in quietly, to confirm if she's there. Evelyn nodded, her pulse thudding in her ears. They slipped around the back, sticking close to the hedges. Through a narrow gap in the curtain, Evelyn saw Patricia sitting on the couch, legs crossed, phone in hand. Her composure was unnerving from here, relaxed, poised, as if nothing could touch her. She looks like she's waiting for something, Franklin whispered. She's waiting for me, Evelyn murmured. Franklin gave her a wary look. Don't get any ideas. But Evelyn couldn't look away. The woman inside that house had destroyed her family, stolen her son, and turned her life into a nightmare, all while wearing a smile. Patricia stood suddenly pacing the room as she talked on the phone. Evelyn strained to hear through the glass. The plan worked, Patricia was saying. Her voice was soft, casual, chilling. He believes everything. The police do too. By next week it'll all be over. Franklin's eyes widened. She's talking about you. Evelyn's nails dug into her palm. Record it, she whispered. He pulled out his phone, hit record, and held it close to the window. The faint murmur of Patricia's words carried through the rain. Once the money clears, we leave the country. No more pretending. He'll get over it. They always do. The last line sent a cold shiver down Evelyn's spine. They always do. How many men had she said that about before? When Patricia hung up, she turned off the lights and left the room. Franklin lowered his phone. We've got her voice. That's enough to start? Evelyn didn't answer. Her eyes stayed fixed on the darkened window where her reflection stared back at her older, wiser, and more complex than ever. They drove back in silence. Franklin finally spoke when they reached the edge of town. Once we hand this over, there's no turning back. She'll know you're fighting her. Evelyn looked out at the endless road ahead. The first light of dawn was rising, painting the horizon in shades of gray and gold. I've spent my whole life believing in justice, she said softly. Now I have to fight for it myself. Franklin nodded. Then we do it together. Evelyn glanced at him, eyes weary but resolute. Together, she agreed. And as the sun broke through the clouds, Evelyn Moore, mother widow and accused criminal, knew there was no going back. The woman behind the mask had started this war, but Evelyn would be the one to end it. The next morning, the storm finally broke. Rain lashed against Franklin's windows as thunder rolled across the Louisiana sky, heavy and unrelenting. Evelyn sat at the table, the same spot she'd claimed for days, clutching a folder so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Inside the folder was her life proof of her innocence, evidence of her betrayal, the voice of the woman who had tried to destroy her. Franklin poured coffee into 2 mugs and set one before her. Are you ready? Evelyn didn't answer right away. She looked out the window, watching the gray rain pour down the street, washing everything clean except her conscience. Ready or not, it doesn't matter. We don't have a choice anymore. He nodded. We'll go straight to the state police headquarters. Captain Rodriguez still owes me. If anyone will listen, it's him. Evelyn rose slowly, her legs stiff from sleepless nights. Then let's go, she said, gathering the folder. The ride to Baton Rouge's state police building was extended and tense. Franklin drove carefully through the storm, while Evelyn sat silent, lost in thought. Each mile brought her closer to the truth and closer to danger. The gray building loomed before them when they arrived like an old courthouse. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, the world muted and pale. Franklin led the way inside, greeting the receptionist with quiet authority. Within minutes, they were ushered to a glass-walled conference room where Captain Rodriguez awaited. He was a tall man in his 50s with a calm power from decades of seeing the worst of humanity. When he saw Franklin, his expression softened. Hayes. Been a long time. Too long, Franklin replied. This is Evelyn Moore. You may have heard her name on the news. Rodriguez's brows furrowed. The poisoning case. Yes. He turned to Evelyn. Ma'am, I understand you're under investigation. What brings you here? Evelyn placed the folder on the table and slid it toward him. Proof, she said. Rodriguez opened it. He examined the documents, the photographs, and the transcripts. When Franklin played the recording of Patricia's voice, the captain leaned forward, listening intently. Once the money clears, we leave the country. No more pretending. The words echoed softly through the sterile room. Rodriguez sat back silent for a long moment. This is substantial, he said finally. If authentic, it changes everything. It's authentic, Franklin said firmly. We also have video evidence to prove that her son was coerced into planting false evidence. We're asking you to reopen the case officially. Rodriguez nodded slowly, his mind already turning. You did the right thing coming here. I'll need to verify these files, but if you tell me the truth, Patricia Peterson won't be free much longer. Evelyn let out a shaky breath. For the first time in weeks, hope didn't feel like a cruel joke. But that hope didn't last. As they left the building, the air outside felt strangely heavy. Franklin walked a step ahead, scanning the parking lot. Evelyn clutched her purse, her mind spinning. When they reached the car, Franklin froze. What is it? Evelyn asked. He didn't answer. He was looking at a folded envelope on the windshield sealed with red wax. He pulled it off slowly and handed it to her. Inside was a single photograph. Evelyn's heart stopped. It was a picture of her house, the one she hadn't lived in since the night she fled. Marcus was standing on the porch in the photo. Next to him, Patricia smiled at the camera. Written across the bottom in neat cursive letters were 3 words. Go home, Mother. Evelyn's hands began to tremble. The photo smelled faintly of perfume, the same floral scent Patricia always wore. Franklin's face hardened. She knows we went to the police. Evelyn's voice cracked. How no one knew we were coming. He clenched his jaw. Then someone in that building tipped her off. They exchanged a look of silent dread. For the first time, Evelyn realized that Patricia's reach went further than she'd ever imagined. They drove in tense silence for over an hour, rain hammering the roof. Evelyn sat motionless, the photo in her lap, her thoughts spiraling. "She's baiting me," she said finally. "She wants me to come back, exactly why we shouldn't," Franklin replied. "That house is a trap. But Marcus is there." Evelyn's voice rose, trembling with desperation. "She has him under her thumb, Franklin. If she knows we went to the police, she'll use him." He turned to her eyes sharp. "You go back, she'll kill you." Evelyn met his gaze. "Then I'll take my chances." Before Franklin could protest, she opened the car door. The rain hit her face like cold needles, but she didn't care. "Evelyn," he shouted, grabbing her arm. "Don't do this alone." She looked at him with the calm that comes when fear has burned out. "You've done enough, Franklin. Thank you. But this is between me, my son, and the devil he married." By the time Evelyn reached her neighborhood, the rain had stopped. The world felt unnaturally still. Her house stood at the end of the street, quiet and dark except for one faint light in the kitchen window. She parked a few houses away and approached on foot. Her shoes sank into wet grass as she moved closer. Every step echoed in her ears. She saw Marcus sitting at the table through the window, his head in his hands. Patricia stood behind him, pouring something into a glass wine maybe. Her movements were slow, deliberate. Evelyn's heart clenched. Then, without warning, Patricia turned toward the window. Their eyes met through the glass. The smile spread across Patricia's lips was small, knowing venomous. Evelyn froze. Patricia raised the glass slowly like a silent toast. Then she handed it to Marcus. "No," Evelyn whispered. She slammed her hand against the window pane. "Marcus, don't." Marcus jerked up, startled. Patricia's smile didn't waver. She stepped behind him, one hand on his shoulder, her eyes never leaving Evelyn's. Evelyn tried the door, but it was locked. She banged on it, shouting his name. Marcus opened the door. Inside, Patricia leaned down, whispering something into Marcus's ear. He looked confused, frightened. Then his expression hardened into something Evelyn didn't recognize, cold, distant. He stood and walked toward the door. When it opened, the smell of wine and perfume hit Evelyn like a wave. "Mom," he said quietly, eyes unreadable. "You shouldn't have come back. Marcus listened to me." "She told me everything," he interrupted. "How did you try to poison her? How are you trying to frame her now?" Evelyn's heart cracked open. "That's not true. She's lying." "I saw the evidence, Mom," he shouted. "You think I don't know what's going on. You're obsessed. You can't stand that I love her." Behind him, Patricia's eyes glittered in the half-light. Her expression was soft, almost pitying. Evelyn took a step forward. "Marcus, please. She's killed before. You're in danger." Patricia sighed dramatically. "She's sick, Marcus. It's sad, really. All those years in court must have broken her mind." "Enough," Marcus's voice cracked. "I said, leave, Mom." Evelyn's lips trembled. "You're my son." He said, "I don't know who you are anymore," turning away. The door slammed shut. Evelyn stood there for a long time, the sound echoing in her chest like a verdict. The rain began again, soft and relentless. She pressed her palm against the cold wood tears, mixing with the water on her face. Behind that door was her son. The boy she'd raised, the man she'd defended, now lost to the poison of another. And for the first time she realized she might never get him back. The morning after Marcus slammed the door in her face, Evelyn sat alone in her car as dawn crept across the empty street. The rain had stopped, but the world still felt soaked in sorrow. Her clothes clung to her skin and her hair hung wet strands against her cheeks. She hadn't gone home. She couldn't. Her house was no longer hers. It was a stage built by Patricia, and she had become the play's villain. When the sun finally rose, Evelyn drove aimlessly through the quiet neighborhoods of New Orleans. Her mind was a fog of disbelief and exhaustion. She caught her reflection in the rearview mirror, at a red light, pale, hollow-eyed, older than she remembered. She thought of Marcus's voice, the cold way he had said, "I don't know who you are anymore." It wasn't just a rejection. It was an execution. Evelyn pulled into a small diner on the edge of the city. The bell over the door chimed softly as she entered. The smell of fried eggs and coffee filled the air, and for a fleeting moment she wished she were just another tired stranger passing through. She ordered black coffee and sat by the window watching cars drift by. Then on the muted TV mounted above the counter she saw her own face. The headline read, "Former prosecutor on the run, new evidence suggests motive in family poisoning case." Evelyn froze. The news anchor's calm voice filled the room. Sources close to the investigation confirm that Evelyn Moore, currently wanted for attempted murder, may have fabricated evidence in an effort to frame her daughter-in-law, Patricia Peterson. Peterson's attorney has released new statements claiming Evelyn harbored jealousy and resentment toward the younger woman. The photo on the screen showed Patricia leaving her home looking fragile and tearful, wrapped in a shawl. Behind her was Marcus, his arm around her shoulders protective. Evelyn's breath hitched. The people in the diner were watching. A man at the counter turned to glance at her, then back to the screen connecting the dots. Whispers rippled. She left a few bills on the table and slipped out the door before anyone could approach. Her heart pounded as she climbed into her car. She fumbled with the keys, hands trembling. Patricia had beaten her to it, not with guns or poison this time, but with the oldest weapon in the world, manipulation. The media was now her executioner. By midday, Evelyn was back at Franklin's house. He met her at the door, his face pale. "You saw it too?" she asked. He nodded grimly and shut the door behind her. "They've turned everything upside down. Patricia's lawyer went public this morning, claimed you've been mentally unstable for years." Evelyn's voice shook. "She's rewriting reality. She's winning the narrative," Franklin said. "And the worst part is she's using Marcus to back her story." They aired clips of him talking to reporters. "Said you've been paranoid since your husband's death." Evelyn sank onto the couch, her legs weak. "My own son said that Franklin hesitated. They probably pressured him. Or he believes it." Evelyn buried her face in her hands. "This is what she wanted, to isolate me completely." Franklin sat across from her, voice low. "She's not just smart, Evelyn. She's strategic. She's creating a version of you that people can hate." Evelyn lifted her head, eyes blazing with pain and defiance. "Then we show them the truth." Franklin sighed. "That's what we've been doing. But now we're out of time. They've issued a statewide alert. You're officially a fugitive again." Evelyn's stomach twisted. "They'll come here." "I know," Franklin said quietly, "which is why you can't stay." That night they packed what little she had left, some clothes, the recordings, and the last fragments of her dignity. Franklin handed her a prepaid phone. "Don't use your old number. They're tracking it. I'll keep working from here, contact my people, and see if I can get someone inside the department who still believes in justice." Evelyn nodded slowly. "What about you?" "If they find out you're helping me, I've been retired for years. They won't care about an older man." She reached out and squeezed his hand. "Thank you, Franklin. You've been more family to me than anyone else." His eyes softened. "Just stay alive long enough to clear your name." Evelyn gave a faint smile. "I'll try." Then she slipped into the night. She drove west, avoiding main highways, taking small country roads through the bayous. The sky was low and starless, and the darkness swallowed headlights whole. Every mile felt heavier. Patricia's voice haunted her thoughts, the soft, calculated tone that had fooled everyone. The image of her son defending that woman played over and over until it became a wound that wouldn't close. Somewhere past Lafayette, Evelyn stopped by an old rest area. She sat on a bench, pulling her coat tighter against the cold. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "You can't hide forever, Evelyn. You'll tire before I do. No name." But she didn't need one. The floral perfume scent seemed to linger in the air, even though she was alone. Evelyn stared at the message until her vision blurred with tears. Then she deleted it. She wouldn't give Patricia the satisfaction of fear. Days passed. Evelyn hid in cheap motels, paying cash, keeping her face low under a hood. The world outside believed she was guilty. Patricia appeared saintly on every local news broadcast, speaking softly about forgiveness and healing, painting Evelyn as a tragic, deranged woman who'd lost touch with reality. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar. In one interview, Patricia even held Marcus's hand as she spoke. "She's my husband's mother," she said tearfully. "I only want her to get the help she needs. I've never stopped praying for her." Evelyn watched silently from a motel room, fist-clenched jaw trembling. "She's good," she murmured bitterly. "She's so good." The reporter smiled sympathetically at Patricia on screen. "You're courageous, Mrs. Peterson." Patricia dabbed fake tears from her eyes. "I'm just trying to protect my family." Evelyn turned off the TV. The silence roared. She realized that the truth alone wouldn't save her. Facts didn't matter anymore, not when the world preferred a prettier lie. On the fifth night, Franklin called. His voice was urgent. "Evelyn, I found something." Her heart jumped. What is it? I traced the financial records Patricia used when she first married Marcus. There's a significant transfer from an offshore account to a trust in her name made just 2 weeks before the poisoning incident. We can prove her pattern if I can connect it to her previous identities. That's the evidence we need. Yes, but there's more. The account was created under Marcus's authorization. She made him sign it. Evelyn's blood ran cold. So she's setting him up too. Exactly. Once she's done with him, he'll take the fall for everything. Poisoning, fraud, you name it. Evelyn gripped the phone tightly. Please send me the address. Where are those documents? I can't, Evelyn Franklin said quickly. I'm being watched. But I've hidden the files somewhere safe. If anything happens to me, you'll know where to find them. Do you remember the old courthouse on St. Bernard Avenue? Yes. There's a locker in the basement number 43. That's where it'll be. Franklin, what are you talking about? What do you mean by, if anything happens? But before he could answer, the line went dead. Evelyn stared at her phone, her stomach twisting with dread. That night she didn't sleep. The next morning she drove back toward New Orleans under a bruised dawn. The streets were quiet, empty, as if holding their breath. When she reached Franklin's house, the front door was ajar. Franklin, she called softly. No answer. She stepped inside. The air was thick with the smell of gunpowder and coffee. A cup lay shattered on the floor. Papers were scattered across the table, some soaked in spilled liquid. And Franklin, dear loyal Franklin, was slumped over his chair, his eyes open but unseeing. Evelyn froze. The room tilted. She stumbled forward, trembling hands reaching for his shoulder. No! No! Please! A single gunshot wound marked his chest. His blood had dried dark against his shirt. Evelyn pressed her shaking hand over her mouth. Her breath came in sharp, uneven gasps. Then she saw it on the table beside him, a small envelope with her name written on it. She picked it up with trembling fingers. Inside was a note in Franklin's familiar handwriting. If you're reading this, she's already found me. Don't stop, Evelyn. Locker 43. The paper shook in her hands. Outside sirens wailed faintly in the distance. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Evelyn Moore felt something more profound than fear. Rage. Evelyn's hands were still trembling when she folded Franklin's note. The sirens outside grew louder, crawling closer through the fog that clung to the narrow Baton Rouge street. She looked one last time at Franklin's lifeless body, the man who had stood beside her when everyone else turned away, and something inside her broke. But not into weakness, into fire. She slipped the note into her pocket, grabbed the small flash drive from his desk, and left through the back door just as police lights flashed at the front. Rain began again, soft at first, then fierce, washing the blood from the steps as she disappeared into the alley. The drive to St. Bernard Avenue felt endless. The city loomed half awake, its streets shining under the drizzle like veins of silver. Every turn of the wheel carried ghosts, Franklin's voice, Marcus's betrayal, Patricia's poisonous smile. By the time Evelyn reached the old courthouse, dawn was barely breaking. The building stood abandoned, a relic of cracked marble and broken glass. Its tall columns, once symbols of justice, now leaned under the weight of neglect and silence. She parked 2 blocks away and approached on foot. The courthouse had been shut down years ago, but Evelyn knew its skeleton by heart. She had once prosecuted a murder trial there, her first major case. She could still remember the echo of her heels on the marble floor, the thrill of believing that truth always won. Now she was walking into its ruins, not as a prosecutor, but as the accused. Inside, dust coated everything. Broken benches lined the halls. Pigeons cooed somewhere in the rafters. Her flashlight beam cut through the gloom, illuminating faded portraits of judges long dead. She descended into the basement where the air grew damp and cold. Rows of old lockers stood against the walls, numbered in peeling paint. 41. 42, 43! Evelyn crouched. The padlock was still there, old but intact. Franklin must have placed the key somewhere nearby. She ran her fingers along the baseboard, her breath shallow. And then, taped behind a loose tile, she found it a tiny brass key. Her hands shook as she turned it. The lock clicked open. Inside were several manila folders wrapped in plastic, a small notebook, and a USB drive marked with red ink if I don't make it. Evelyn swallowed hard and took everything. She sat against the cold concrete floor, opening the first folder. Bank records, transfer slips, a list of names. Each name was a man older, wealthy, deceased within a year of marriage. Harold Blackwood, Robert Mills, Daniel Carver. Each is connected to offshore accounts. Each transaction led to the same shell company signed by the same alias, Victoria Blackwood. Patricia. Franklin had done it. He had proven everything. Evelyn's vision blurred with tears. You brilliant older man, she whispered. Then she opened the notebook. Inside Franklin's handwriting detailed timelines, contacts, and one final entry dated just 2 days before his death. She's watching me, but I think she suspects Evelyn knows too much. If she kills me, it means she's desperate. That means she's close to losing control. A noise echoed down the stairwell. Footsteps. Evelyn's blood ran cold. She shut the locker quietly and turned off her flashlight. The steps grew louder, careful, deliberate. Someone else was in the building. She pressed herself against the wall, heart pounding. Through the faint light spilling from the basement door, she saw a shadow pause at the bottom of the stairs. Then a voice, smooth, calm, familiar. Evelyn, darling, you've always been predictable. Patricia. Evelyn gripped the notebook tighter. Her pulse roared in her ears. Patricia descended slowly, her heels clicking against the concrete, each step deliberate, mocking. She was dressed in black, sleek, immaculate, her face half lit by the dim light from above. Patricia said, "You shouldn't have come here," her voice silk over poison. "But curiosity was always your weakness." Evelyn stepped out of the shadows. "You killed him." Patricia tilted her head, smiling faintly. "Oh, Franklin, don't be dramatic. He was collateral. He insisted on being a hero. Heroes are so inconvenient." Evelyn's throat burned. "You won't get away with this." Patricia laughed softly. "I already have. Look around, Evelyn. You're a murderer, a fugitive, a mad older woman screaming about conspiracies. Meanwhile, I'm giving interviews about compassion and forgiveness. The world loves me. Marcus will know the truth." Evelyn said, voice trembling but fierce. Patricia's eyes glittered. "Marcus, sweet, naive Marcus. He's more useful when he doesn't think. You raised him to worship you, now he worships me." "That's poetic." Evelyn took a slow step forward. "You destroyed my family." Patricia's tone hardened. "No, Evelyn, you destroyed it the moment you thought you were smarter than everyone else. You taught your son loyalty could be bought with approval, and when he didn't need it anymore, he traded it for mine." Evelyn's nails dug into her palms. "You're wrong," Patricia smirked. "Am I?" For a moment they stood there, two women bound by rage and ruin, one driven by vengeance, the other by survival. Then Patricia's gaze flicked toward the bag slung over Evelyn's shoulder. "You have something that belongs to me." Evelyn backed away. "These belong to the men you killed." Patricia sighed. "Always so noble. It's exhausting." She reached into her coat. A metallic glint caught the faint light. A gun. Evelyn froze. Patricia raised it casually, like a woman holding a glass of wine. "Please give me the files, Evelyn. I'll even let you live long enough to disappear somewhere quiet." "Isn't that merciful?" Evelyn stared at her, trembling but unflinching. "You won't shoot me." Patricia smiled, eyes cold. "You'd be surprised what I'm capable of." Evelyn's mind raced. Behind Patricia, the basement door was still open, a sliver of gray morning light spilling down the steps. If she could distract her even for a second... She let her voice soften. "Tell me, Patricia, do you even remember their names, the men you killed?" Patricia hesitated a flicker, but it was enough. Evelyn hurled the notebook toward her and lunged sideways. The gunshot cracked through the silence, echoing against the concrete. Dust rained from the ceiling. Evelyn hit the ground, hard pain shooting through her shoulder. She crawled behind a row of lockers as Patricia's heels clicked closer. "You're wasting your time, Evelyn," Patricia called out, voice echoing off the walls. "I've survived worse than you." Evelyn's fingers brushed against the flashlight she'd dropped earlier. She grabbed it, flicked it off, and waited. When Patricia rounded the lockers, Evelyn swung the heavy flashlight with all her strength. It connected with a dull thud. Patricia gasped, stumbling backward. The gun clattered to the floor. They struggled, two women locked in a desperate, wordless battle. Evelyn clawed at Patricia's wrist, the smell of blood and dust mixing in the air. Patricia fought like a cornered animal, her elegance dissolving into pure violence. Finally, Evelyn wrenched the gun away and pointed it at her. Both women froze, one standing, one kneeling, breathing hard. Evelyn's hands shook. "You killed Franklin. You poisoned me. You turned my son against me." Patricia smiled through a split lip. "And yet here I am, still standing, because deep down you can't pull the trigger. You never could." Evelyn's finger hovered over the trigger. She wanted to. God, she wanted to. But Franklin's voice echoed in her memory. "Don't stop, Evelyn. Locker 43. Slowly, she lowered the gun. You're right, Evelyn whispered. I don't need to. She swung the gun's handle instead, striking Patricia across the head. The woman collapsed to the floor unconscious. Evelyn stood over her chest, heaving. She took the USB drive, the files, and the gun, then turned toward the exit. As she reached the top of the stairs, sunlight broke through the courthouse windows, pale, fragile, like a promise. Evelyn didn't look back. The road stretched endlessly before Evelyn as she drove north, the wind tearing through broken windows and the first light of dawn turning the sky a faint gold. The files sat on the passenger seat beside her, Franklin's last legacy truth bound in paper and ink. She hadn't slept in days. She saw Franklin's blood, Patricia's smile, and Marcus's cold stare whenever she closed her eyes. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed again. The city had become her cage, but beyond it lay a chance slim, fragile, but real. She needed to get the evidence to someone she could trust. There was one name left, Detective Howard Grant, an old colleague from her days as a prosecutor, a man too stubborn to be bought and too proud to bow. She gripped the wheel tighter. Hold on, Franklin, she whispered. I'm not done yet. By mid-morning, she reached the outskirts of Lafayette. The air was heavy with humidity, and the streets shimmered with heat. Evelyn parked behind a laundromat and changed clothes, trading her soaked blouse for a faded hoodie and jeans. She covered her silver hair with a cap. The USB drive lay in her pocket like a heartbeat. She found a payphone outside a gas station and dialed a number she hadn't used in years. Howard Grant, a gravelly voice, answered. Howard, she said quietly. It's Evelyn Moore. There was a pause. Then disbelief. Evelyn. You're alive. Christ. The news, they said you... I know what they said. I need your help. He lowered his voice. You're wanted statewide. If anyone traces this call, they won't. I need a place to meet. Somewhere off the grid, he hesitated. You trust me, I'm out of options. Grant exhaled. All right, there's an old boathouse by Lake Martin. You remember it, my uncle's property. 1 hour. The line went dead. Evelyn closed her eyes and breathed. She felt the faint pulse of hope again for the first time in weeks. Lake Martin was quiet when she arrived. Cypress trees rose from the still water draped with curtains of gray moss. The air smelled of mud and wood smoke. The boathouse was as she remembered, small-weathered but hidden from the main road. Grant was waiting by the dock, hands tucked into his jacket. He looked older, broader in the shoulders, his eyes lined with exhaustion and caution. Evelyn, he said softly, you look like hell. Feels about right. He motioned her inside. Tell me everything. She spread the files across a wooden table. Patricia Peterson, she's not who she says she is. Her real name is Victoria Blackwood. She's been conning and killing rich men for over a decade. Franklin found the proof, and now he's dead. Grant flipped through the documents, his brow furrowing deeper with each page. These accounts, the offshore transfers. Jesus, Evelyn. This is big. But it's not enough. Without a living witness, they'll dismiss it as fabricated. Evelyn reached into her pocket and placed the USB drive before him. Then hear her in her own words. He inserted the drive into his laptop. Patricia's voice filled the air, calm, confident, monstrous. Once the money clears, we leave. He'll never know what hit him. Grant leaned back slowly. That's her. Evelyn nodded. He rubbed his face. All right, I'll take this to the federal office myself. You'll stay here until I can arrange protection. They won't find you. But Evelyn's gut twisted. She's always one step ahead. If she survived that night, she'll come. Grant gave her a tired smile. Let her. I'm not the one who scares easily. He left before dusk, the evidence in his briefcase. Evelyn watched him drive away until his headlights vanished among the trees. Night fell. The lake grew darker, the croak of frogs filling the silence. Evelyn sat by the window, her reflection faint against the glass. She thought of Marcus. Where was he now? Did Patricia still control him, or had he begun to doubt the memory of his face, cold, angry, but trembling, cut deep? She whispered to the night, please let him see. But the night had no mercy. A soft crunch outside broke her thoughts. Evelyn froze. The boathouse door creaked. A silhouette slipped through, tall, broad-shouldered. Howard, she called softly. No answer. Then the figure stepped into the dim light. It wasn't Howard. It was Marcus. Evelyn's heart stopped. Marcus. He looked thinner, his eyes shadowed his clothes, damp from rain. Mom, he said quietly. Tears filled her eyes. You came. I shouldn't have. I shouldn't even be here. Evelyn took a step forward. You're safe now. Listen to me, Marcus. She's dangerous. Everything she told you was a lie. He shook his head. You don't understand. She told me you'd say that, Marcus. She said you'd try to turn me against her, that you'd do anything to destroy us. Us. Evelyn's voice cracked. She killed Franklin. She... He slammed his hand on the table. Stop, just stop. You think I don't see how you've always tried to control me? Evelyn's throat tightened. I tried to protect you. Protect me. He laughed bitterly. You protected your pride. You hated her because she was everything you weren't. Young, beautiful, loved, Evelyn whispered. She loves no one. He hesitated. The flicker of doubt in his eyes was small but real. Then another voice cut through the silence. Oh, but I do. Patricia stepped out of the shadows near the door, a faint smile curving her lips. Evelyn's breath caught. No. Patricia looked serene, her hair tied back, a gun in her hand. You really should have stayed gone, Evelyn. You're exhausting to chase. Marcus turned to her, his face pale. Patricia, what are you shh? She touched his arm gently. You did beautifully, sweetheart. You led us right to her. Evelyn's blood ran cold. Marcus. No. His voice cracked. I didn't know, she said, quiet. Patricia hissed, eyes never leaving Evelyn. You had a good run, older woman, but every story needs an ending. Evelyn stared at her son, his trembling hands, the confusion on his face. Marcus, you still have a choice. Patricia laughed softly. He made it long ago. The air thickened with tension. Patricia raised the gun steady and calm, but before she could fire, Marcus stepped in front of her. No. Patricia blinked. Move. He shook his head. I said no. I'm done. Her eyes hardened. You pathetic fool. You think she'll forgive you after this? Marcus turned toward Evelyn, tears streaking down his face. Mom, I'm sorry. The shot rang out. Evelyn screamed. Marcus fell to the ground, clutching his chest. Patricia's face twisted, not in remorse, but fury. She turned the gun toward Evelyn, but Evelyn was faster. She lunged, grabbing the barrel. The gun went off again, the recoil flinging both women to the floor. Patricia hit her head against the wall, the weapon slipping from her grasp. Evelyn seized it, hands shaking, chest heaving. Patricia's breath rattled as she tried to sit up, eyes glazed with disbelief. He was mine, she whispered. Evelyn looked at her son lying motionless, his blood spreading across the floor. No, she said softly, her voice breaking. He was mine. She dropped the gun. When the police arrived an hour later, the dawn rose over Lake Martin, turning the water crimson. Detective Grant stood by the ambulance, watching as officers zipped Patricia's body into a black bag. Evelyn sat nearby, wrapped in a blanket, silent, hollow-eyed. Beside her lay Marcus, his hand resting limply in hers. Grant crouched down. It's over, he said gently. Evelyn didn't look up. Nothing's ever over, Howard, not for a mother. He said nothing more. The sun climbed higher, burning away the mist. In its light, Evelyn's tears shimmered like glass. The hospital room was quiet, except for the steady hum of the heart monitor. Evelyn sat beside the bed, her back stiff, her hands clasped together tightly in her lap. The faint beeping marked time like a fragile heartbeat between two worlds, life and the unbearable edge of loss. Marcus lay motionless, his skin pale under the white light. Bandages wrapped his chest where the bullet had gone through. He looked peaceful, almost like the boy he once was before Patricia ambition and betrayal. The doctors had said the bullet missed his heart by an inch. He's lucky, one of them had murmured. But to Evelyn, it didn't feel like luck. It felt like punishment, a reminder of how close she'd come to losing him forever. She brushed a lock of hair from his forehead, her touch trembling. You were supposed to be safe, she whispered. Grant stood quietly by the doorway, his coat still damp from the morning rain. He's strong, he said softly. If anyone can pull through, it's him. Evelyn didn't look up. He's been strong for all the wrong reasons. Grant hesitated, then crossed the room and set a folder on the small table beside her. The case is closed, Evelyn. The feds confirmed Patricia's real identity, Victoria Blackwood. Her record matches 6 deaths across 3 states. They're calling it a serial pattern now. Evelyn exhaled slowly. So, it's over. Legally, he said. But you and I both know it doesn't end there. She nodded faintly. No. Not when you lose everything you were trying to protect. For the next few days, Evelyn stayed by Marcus's side. She barely ate, barely spoke. Nurses came and went, their footsteps soft against the tile floor. Sometimes when exhaustion pulled her into sleep, she dreamed of her son as a little boy running through their backyard, laughing, calling her name. She would wake up crying every time. On the fourth night, Marcus stirred. The sound was slight, but enough to make her heart jolt. "Marcus," she whispered, leaning forward. His eyes fluttered open. Confusion clouded them at first, then pain. "Mom." Evelyn caught his hand, tears welling up. "I'm here. I'm right here." He blinked, voice hoarse. What happened?" "You were shot, but you're safe now. Patricia can't hurt you anymore." He was silent for a moment, the words sinking in. Then his jaw tightened. "She's dead." Evelyn nodded. He closed his eyes, turning his face away. "I killed her." "No," Evelyn said quickly. "She made her choice. You tried to stop her, but I brought her there," he said, voice cracking. "I believed her. I believed every lie she told about you." Evelyn shook her head. "You were manipulated, Marcus. Don't carry her sins." He turned to her, then tears gathering in the corners of his eyes. "You warned me, Mom, and I called you crazy." Evelyn smiled faintly through the ache. "You're my son. That's all that matters." But inside, the words tasted like ashes, because she knew forgiveness could not erase the scars left behind on his body or in their hearts. When Marcus was stable enough to leave, they returned to the small house on the edge of town, the one Franklin had once helped her buy years ago. The air smelled of pine and rain. The rooms were quiet, heavy, and absent. Marcus moved slowly, his steps careful. The bandages under his shirt tugged when he breathed. Evelyn helped him sit on the couch, arranging a blanket over his legs. "Home," he murmured, looking around. "It doesn't feel real." "It hasn't for a long time," she said gently. He looked at her. "What happens now?" Evelyn took a deep breath. "We rebuild. We tell the truth, maybe not to the world, but ourselves." He nodded, eyes distant. "She fooled everyone, didn't she?" "Yes," Evelyn said, "but not forever. Lies always end where truth begins." Marcus swallowed hard, and Evelyn's throat tightened. He gave his life for this. He believed in justice more than anyone I've ever known. Marcus looked down, guilt shadowing his face. "I owe him everything." "No," Evelyn said softly. "You owe him peace. Live your life in a way he'd be proud of." Days blurred into weeks. The news moved on. Patricia's story became just another headline, another sensational tragedy for people to gossip about and forget. But for Evelyn and Marcus, forgetting was impossible. Sometimes she found him sitting by the window long after midnight, staring into the dark. Other times she caught him whispering to no one, unfinished apologies, broken memories. She never interrupted. She sat beside him, their silence heavy but shared. One evening, Marcus handed her a small box. "I found this in Patricia's things. The police gave it back." Evelyn opened it carefully. Inside was a locket, silver heart-shaped. When she clicked it open, she froze. Inside were two pictures, one of Marcus taken years ago and one of Patricia. Evelyn's breath caught. "She kept this." Marcus nodded. "She said she loved me. Maybe in her own twisted way. She did." Evelyn closed the locket slowly. Evil people can love, Marcus, but their love consumes instead of giving. He looked at her, then tears shimmering. "Do you think I can ever be free of her?" Evelyn reached out and touched his cheek. "You already are. The moment you chose to stand between us, you broke her hold." He covered her hand with his. "I wish I'd seen it sooner." "So do I," she said. "But sometimes we must walk through fire to know what's worth saving." Weeks later, Grant came to visit. He looked older, the lines on his face deeper, but his voice was steady. "I thought you two might want this," he said, placing an envelope on the table. Evelyn frowned. "What is it?" Franklin's commendation. "The department reinstated it posthumously. They're naming a community fund after him for victims of fraud and abuse." Evelyn's eyes glistened. He'd hate the attention. Grant chuckled. "Probably. But he'd like to know it made a difference." Marcus nodded quietly. "He deserves it." Grant turned to him. "How are you holding up?" Marcus hesitated. "Trying to live with what I did." Grant studied him for a moment. "Then start by living, son. The rest will follow." When he left, the house felt lighter, like a door had opened somewhere they couldn't see. That night, Evelyn stepped outside. The sky was clear for the first time in weeks. Stars shimmered above the pine trees like scattered pieces of hope. Marcus joined her on the porch, leaning on the railing. Have you ever thought we'll be okay again? Evelyn looked up at the stars. I don't know if we'll ever be the same, but that's not what matters. It could be enough that we're still here. He was quiet for a moment. You know, when I was lying in that hospital bed, I kept hearing your voice. I thought I was dreaming. What did I say? You said, come home. Evelyn smiled faintly. Then you listened for once. He laughed softly, the sound fragile but real. For the first time in a long while, Evelyn felt the weight on her chest ease just a little. The air smelled of pine and new beginnings. She reached out, took her son's hand, and together they stood in the quiet night listening to the world breathe again. The storm had passed, but its echoes would live inside them, a reminder of love tested, shattered, and remade. 6 months later, spring came to Baton Rouge quietly. The azaleas bloomed along the sidewalks, their pink petals scattered across the streets like a promise that even broken things could grow again. The air smelled of rain and renewal, the kind that makes you forget for a moment how much you've lost. Evelyn Moore stood at the gate of St. Augustine Cemetery, her black coat fluttering in the wind. The grass had just been cut, and the hum of distant traffic blended softly with birdsong. She carried a bouquet of white lilies, Franklin's favorite. The grave was simple: Franklin Morrison, 1957 to 2025. He believed in justice even when it didn't believe in him. Evelyn placed the flowers carefully against the headstone and crouched down, her fingers tracing the carved letters. I wish you were here to see it, she whispered. They named the fund after you, the Franklin Foundation. It's helping people already. Grant said it's growing fast. A breeze rustled through the trees, lifting a few petals from her bouquet. She smiled faintly. I know you didn't do it for praise. You'd roll your eyes at all the speeches. She looked up at the pale sky. But you did it, Frank. You stopped her. You saved us. Her voice trembled on the last words. The silence of the graveyard was gentle, almost kind. Evelyn stayed longer, lost in the rhythm of the wind and the weight of everything she'd survived. Back home, Marcus was sitting at the kitchen table that evening, sorting through old photos. The light from the window fell across his face, softer now, more at peace, though his eyes still carried the shadow of what they'd seen. He looked up when she entered. Hey, Mom, you were gone a while. I visited Franklin. Marcus nodded slowly. I've been thinking about him too. Sometimes I hear his voice when I'm working, telling me to slow down and think before acting. Evelyn smiled. Sounds like him. He hesitated, then held up a photo. It was old, worn at the edges, a picture of the three of them from years ago. Evelyn, Franklin, and Marcus at a courthouse charity event. Franklin was mid-laugh, his arm draped casually around Marcus's shoulder. Evelyn stood on the other side, proud and radiant. I used to hate this picture, Marcus said. I thought it made me look like a kid. But now, it reminds me of what we were before everything went wrong. Evelyn sat beside him. We were a family, imperfect, but real. Marcus nodded, studying the photo. I want to make things right again. I've been talking to Grant about volunteering at the foundation, helping families rebuild after financial scams, especially older people. Her heart softened. That's good, Marcus. That's what Franklin would have wanted. He looked at her. It's what you would have wanted to. Evelyn reached over and squeezed his hand. For a long time, neither spoke. Words weren't needed. The silence between them wasn't cold anymore. It was healing. That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She stood on the porch watching the fireflies blink among the trees. The air hummed softly, that quiet hum of life that returns after chaos. She thought about the past 6 months, the trial that followed Patricia's death, the reporters, the public fascination. She'd refused every interview, every TV invitation. Some stories didn't belong to the world, they belonged to the people who lived them. Marcus had stayed out of the spotlight too. He was rebuilding his life piece by piece, working part-time at a local community center, helping seniors understand their rights. Sometimes she'd catch him smiling at the most minor things, the smell of coffee, the sound of rain. He'd changed. They both had. Evelyn looked at her own reflection in the window. Time had etched lines into her face, but her eyes were steady. There was no bitterness left, only acceptance. She didn't feel like a victim or a fugitive, just for the first time in years a mother who had survived her own war. She whispered to the night, "We're still here, Franklin." Marcus drove her to the riverfront the following Sunday, their old picnic spot when he was a child. The Willamette River shimmered under the sunlight, dotted with boats and laughter. Children chased one another along the path, their laughter echoing in the air. Evelyn sat on a wooden bench watching the water flow past. "Do you ever think about Dad?" Marcus asked suddenly. She nodded. "Every day. He was the first person who taught me that love isn't about control. It's about staying even when it hurts." Marcus smiled faintly. "I used to think love meant never disappointing someone." Now she asked. He looked at her. "Love means forgiving someone who did." Evelyn's eyes glistened. "Then you've learned what took me a lifetime." They sat silently for a long while, the sun dipping lower in the sky. The water caught the light gold ripples shimmering across its surface. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out something wrapped in paper. I made this for you." She unwrapped it gently. Inside was a small wooden carving, a mother and son holding hands. The lines were uneven, the finish rough, but it was beautiful. "I started it in therapy," Marcus said. "They said creating something helps rebuild what was lost. I thought maybe it could remind us that we're still connected." Evelyn blinked back tears. "It already does." As the sun set, they stood together at the river's edge. Evelyn watched the current swirl around the stones, carrying fallen petals downstream. "Do you think Franklin ever found peace?" Marcus asked quietly. Evelyn looked out at the horizon. "I think he always had it. Even at the end, he believed in doing what was right. That's peace enough." "And you?" She smiled, her gaze soft. "I'm learning." A gentle wind swept across the water, tugging at her coat. She closed her eyes and let it carry her breath away, a quiet surrender not to defeat but to grace. When she opened them again, Marcus watched her with a small, uncertain smile. "What?" she asked. "You look lighter," he said. Evelyn laughed softly. "Maybe I finally am." They turned toward home as twilight fell their shadows long across the path. Behind them, the river kept flowing, indifferent yet eternal, carrying away everything that once tried to destroy them, leaving only what mattered, love's fragile, stubborn remains.